In the heart of the 12th century, when kingdoms rose and fell like tides, one man stood between chaos and conscience, Sultan Salahuddin Ayyubi. He was not born into luxury, but into a time of blood and division. From the deserts of Tikrit to the courts of Damascus, he carried within him something rarer than power or balance, the strength to wield a sword and the wisdom to know when not to. Under the burning sun of Syria, he trained not just in warfare, but in faith. He was taught that victory was hollow without justice and conquest meaningless without mercy. The world saw him as a warrior, but those closest knew Salahuddin was a guardian of purpose. His heart ached not for thrones, but for unity, not for gold, but for truth. But truth, in every age, has enemies, not always in armor, sometimes in silk. As Salahuddin rose to defend Jerusalem and unify the Muslim world, the cracks beneath loyalty began to whisper. Within the glittering halls of trade and diplomacy, the scent of betrayal traveled like unseen smoke. It was then that a man appeared, a merchant with eyes that hid stories, words sweet as honey, and a fortune built on secrets. He brought gifts from distant lands and promises of alliances yet unseen. The Sultan welcomed him with courtesy, unaware that in the shadow of every candle, darkness breathes too. This man was Rakuf, the trader who would sell trust for profit and peace for ambition. Before the armies clashed, before the banners rose, it was a merchant's whisper that threatened to break the empire from within. Rakuf's name first echoed across the ports of Alexandria, a man of foreign blood, fluent in many tongues, and fluent even more in the art of persuasion. He was said to have traveled from the western isles of the Mediterranean, carrying spices, jewels, and whispers from distant courts. His caravans crossed borders with ease, untouched by soldiers, for gold was his passport and deceit his armor. He spoke softly of peace but traded in conflict. To the Crusaders, he sold maps of Muslim cities. To the Muslims, he carried rumors of Crusader weakness. Yet wherever he went, his smile disarmed suspicion, a merchant who could read men's greed like scripture. When he reached Damascus, his fame preceded him. His generosity dazzled courtiers. His knowledge of trade routes impressed commanders. He spoke of uniting trade under Salahuddin's rule, of filling the Sultan's treasury with wealth from the west. And so, with grace and cunning, he entered the circle of trust. But Rakuf's heart was not moved by faith or loyalty. He had seen kingdoms burn and rebuild, and to him, every throne was temporary, except that of prophet. He believed that men of faith could be bent with gold, and even the purest purpose could be bought for the right price. Beneath his polished manners lay the scars of betrayal. Once a traitor wronged by both East and West, he now vowed to serve only himself. He viewed the world as a market, not a home. As the Sultan planned unity, Rakuf planned division. While Salahuddin prayed beneath the stars for strength and justice, Rakuf, under the same sky, prayed for opportunity. He had found his greatest trade yet, the trust of a sultan. Deception never begins with a sword. It begins with a whisper. Rakuf understood this better than any general who wielded steel. He moved like wind through the Sultan's court, unseen, unheard, but everywhere. His words were gentle, yet his intent was venom. He began by tightening his web where no one looked. The merchants, the messengers, the men who carried bread and news alike. He offered them gold, luxuries, promises of trade privileges that stretched across seas. Soon, his voice reached the ears of commanders and advisors, disguised as counsel, wrapped in care. He sowed doubt in unity's soil. The Sultan, he murmured, is merciful, too merciful. Mercy cannot win wars. He fed ambition in others, envy in the weak, and suspicion in the loyal. Every doubt he planted grew like thorns around Salahuddin's name. Beyond the palace, Rakuf's network spread. Trading routes turned into corridors of espionage. Caravans that once carried silk now carried secrets. Crusader agents began receiving coded messages disguised in shipment scrolls. Maps, troop movements, even letters of alliance, all passed quietly under the seal of a trusted trader. Yet Rakuf never appeared desperate or hurried. He was a man of patience. He believed corruption was an art, not a storm but a slow eclipse that darkens the sun without being seen. And for a time, it worked. Minor misunderstandings flared into arguments among Salahuddin's men. Supplies disappeared, orders were delayed, and rumors spread like dust and wind. Still, Salahuddin watched, silent, composed, his eyes steady as the desert horizon. For he had seen such shadows before, and he knew Even the deepest deceit eventually steps into light. While court murmured and suspicion grew, Sultan Salahuddin Ayyubi remained still, a calm sea beneath a brewing storm. His silence was not ignorance. It was calculation. He had learned from the Quran and the battlefield alike that haste feeds chaos, and only patience reveals the true face of deceit. He watched Rakuf closely, yet never directly. The Sultan began to trace patterns, trade ships arriving too early, messages delayed too long, familiar faces disappearing quietly from the markets of Damascus. He knew that the web tightening around his empire had a single spider, and that spider believed himself unseen. Salahuddin's strategy was not confrontation, it was exposure through wisdom. He sent his own trusted men, disguised as traders, into Rakuf's routes. They followed his caravans, copied his trade seals, and intercepted letters written in invisible ink. Slowly, the threads began to reveal a design too intricate for mere commerce, the design of treachery. But even as he uncovered betrayal, the Sultan's heart did not turn bitter. A leader, he once said, must not hate those who wrong him, for hatred clouds judgment. Justice must rise from truth, not vengeance. So he let Rakuf believe his schemes were working. He allowed the trader's confidence to grow, to speak more freely, to trust his own shadow. The court continued as usual, laughter, feasts, the illusion of peace. Yet under that calm, Salahuddin built a trap of silence, one that would close not with anger, but with proof. For in his mind echoed a timeless wisdom. Lies can travel swift like the desert wind, but truth walks like dawn, slow, certain, and unstoppable. And dawn was coming for Rakuf. It began with a letter, nothing extraordinary at first glance. A merchant's contract, sealed with Rakuf's insignia, addressed to a crusader noble in Acre. But beneath the lines of trade and courtesy, hidden in a second layer of ink, lay coded numbers, coordinates of Salahuddin's supply routes. It was the proof the Sultan had waited for. He read it in silence, the flicker of a candle painting soft light on his face. No fury crossed his eyes. Only a quiet grief, the kind that comes when trust dies. For betrayal, to a man like Salahuddin, was never a surprise, only a sadness. He ordered nothing at first. Instead, he invited Rakuf to dine with him the next evening. The trader arrived in silk robes, a jeweled dagger at his waist, and a smile that carried no fear. The Sultan greeted him warmly, speaking of peace, of trade, of the blessings of faith. Then, with deliberate calm, he laid the letter before him. Rakuf's hand trembled, only slightly, but the tremor was enough. The guards did not move. Salahuddin did not raise his voice. He simply said, "The weight of gold you carry could not buy the soul you sold." Rakuf's silence was louder than any confession. He looked into the eyes of the man he had betrayed, expecting rage, but finding mercy instead. That mercy was heavier than punishment. The Sultan did not spill his blood. Instead, he stripped him of honor, of wealth, of name, banishing him from every land under the crescent's light. A man once known across empires disappeared into dust, forgotten by history, remembered only by sin. For Salahuddin's justice was not revenge, it was revelation. The sun rose gently over Damascus, its golden hue kissing the marble courtyards where soldiers trained and scholars debated. The city had survived yet another storm, not of swords, but of deceit. Salahuddin walked through the courtyard that morning, his steps unhurried, his thoughts far beyond the walls of stone and sand. The traitor was gone, but the echoes of his betrayal lingered, not as shame, but as a warning etched in memory. The Sultan gathered his council, men of wisdom and faith, and spoke not of the man who betrayed him, but of the flaw that allowed betrayal to bloom. Power, he said quietly, is not tested by the loyalty it receives, but by the truth it survives. His voice carried across the hall, firm, calm, timeless. The scribes wrote every word, yet few truly understood the weight they carried. That evening, he walked among the common people, unnoticed by most. He listened to a baker speak of his hunger, a widow speak of her grief, and a child selling figs to feed his mother. In their honesty, he found more strength than in 1,000 armored knights. This was his empire's real foundation, the hearts of the humble. As the call to prayer echoed across the twilight sky, Salahuddin paused on the mosque steps, looking toward Jerusalem, the city he had once conquered not with fire, but with forgiveness. The lesson was clear, immortal. Every betrayal reveals not weakness, but wisdom, For through the cracks in trust, a ruler learns where the light must enter. And so, the tale of a traitor's fall became a ruler's reflection, not on vengeance, but on the purity of purpose that no enemy could corrupt.